Oh.
3 is the magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, y'all. I'm so excited to be here. I'm geeked. And, you know, if you know me, you know, to geek is part of, well, I'll keep it humble. Guys, when you see these, you know what to do. See, these 3 smiling angelic countenances, you know some things are to be true. 1, it must be Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST somewhere in our hemisphere. 2, you're about to be ensorcelled by 3 expert cartoonists. That's right. Did you brush your teeth? Welcome to the Skull Cave. You messed me up with that skull. Ensorcelled, good looks. Oh, I haven't done this one in a while. And also, you may be ensorcelled by our matinee idol, good looks in Lantern Jaws. Pinch Me, I Must Be Dreaming. Pencil to Pencil's back on your video scope, guys. Hello. Yo, he lost some weight. Guys, let's do some intros. My name is Jamar Nicholas. I'm your first humble host, your friendly neighborhood Grand Poobah. I'm back again on the set. I do a lot of stuff, you guys. I spin a lot of plates on tiny little dowels. It's kind of what I'm known for. One of those things is producing this lovely program. Another is I am on the board of directors of the National Cartoonist Society. This Sunday, join us for our live open house Zoom that's open to the public. You must register to enter, where we are going to watch a documentary about the Lockhorns. Yes, that cartoon. Remember that comic strip? Yes, they still do that. Just because you don't read the newspaper don't mean stuff doesn't exist anymore. It's still there. With Bunny Host and John Reiner, I will be hosting that. That is going to be 5 p.m. EST on Sunday, the 31st. Go to nationalcartoonist.com for more information. Also, I have a graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. I did not upload the cover again, Mike Bailey. It's almost like I'm making it up.
Wow.
I forgot. Leon and the Big Problem will be in stores January 2027. Steve, what should they do?
Cop it, why don't you?
Yes! I love it when a plan comes together. So speaking of that, let's do an introduction for my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator. You almost hit him as he was crossing against traffic along this internet superhighway. But if you hit him, you'd only make him angry. Let's not do that. Guys,
only your car would stop.
He'd go like this.
That's right. Your car would stop and would start going up in the air, and you'd be like, "What? What's going on?"
In slow motion, like a Stephen
That's
J.
right.
Cannell show.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And you hear like sounds of stuff like.
You're friend of mine. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve?
Gentlemen, so good to see you. Didn't you want to, as a kid, didn't you want to just walk down the road with your jacket, hooking one finger on the lapel of your jacket and walk down the road? That kind of
with a melodic tinkle at your back. I almost forgot.
Tinkling, and the kids would laugh at you when they went by. Ha! You're tinkling.
Stop tinkling, Conley.
Splashed with some puddle water from the road as the SUVs clip the puddles. But my name is Steve Conley, your slightly soaked co-host. I create the webcomic, The Middle Age, which you read over at middleagecomic.com. It's on your Go Comics, it's on your Tapas, it's on your Webtoons. And I'm a card-carrying member of the NCS myself. I just noticed President Bill Morrison, 2018, a vintage card. And I also make TTRPG stuff. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, go check out steveconley.com. I got a ton of stuff over there. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce physicians, scientists searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have. Then an accidental overdose of cartooning radiation altered his body chemistry. He is the incredible Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm a mere mockery of a cartoonist.
Look away! I'm hideous.
Look away! I drew your childhood. I got into one of those just the other day. I drew somebody's childhood. So,
yeah. What was the thing that we're talking?
What was it? I think it was that either the issue of the Transformer or when I posted that splash page from the Johnny Thunder comic that I ghosted layouts for Dick Giordano. I got a lot of feedback. Yeah, I did that. I've done that several times. That was one of my skill sets in the beginning. Was I was good at doing layouts. So a lot of people are good at drawing, and I think I was better at layouts and inking. And then my drawing wasn't bad, but I could read a script in through layouts. So
it was just like something that just clicked into place for you.
Yeah, I think I had what I call it. I think I always had the storyteller brain. I just think that's the way my brain works, And I did tons of that stuff as a teenager. I would do, like 5-page stories or a whole bunch of different things, and I would do layouts. I would read things like the Comics Journal, and they would show like Gil Kane's layouts or Neil Adams' layouts. And you do them small, and then you blow them up, or you use the projector to trace them off. So I started doing that very early on. So that was a skill set I was able to exploit right in the beginning of my career.
Were you writing your own stories at that point?
Well, writing. Captain America fights Nazis in an alley. Writing,
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'd read that.
Yeah, I mean, there was no way to really get a script back then.
Right.
So I would write little scenarios, and then I would, lay them all out, then blow it up, and work on my light box, which at that time was my first light box was a sheet of plexiglass set on my lap with paper taped underneath to kind of frost it, and a lamp between my legs. And that was my light box for a while. It was like super like ghetto light box, right? And then My next light box was a light fixture from I bought it at an Army surplus place that was a light, like, you know, when you go to Kmart or any store, there's the lights in the ceiling with the tubes. So I bought that, and then I bought a piece of frosted glass, put that in. So I was able to use that, except if I held it just exactly wrong, I could feel the power.
Oh, jeez.
So I had that until I moved out east. And when I started working, making money, two things I bought right away was a real light box, which I still have, which is over here, and a Xerox machine. With the money that I got from my first Marvel job, which was the Transformers, which sold like hotcakes, I actually went and bought a Xerox machine, and you would not believe what a boon it was to have a Xerox, your own copy machine in the 80s, because you know, now everybody sort of just takes it for granted, just, you know, shoot a picture with your camera or you scan it or whatever. But back then, having a copy machine was great for doing layouts or making copies of pencils in case you had to. Because when you would FedEx something, you had to make copies.
Right.
Because what happens if the plane went down or something, right? So, but that meant that you had to be done early enough to go into town to the copy place, which was run by a real asshole, right? Because you had to meet the FedEx cutoff time, right? So you had to be like, if it was 5 when they come to your house, you'd have to go down there by 3. And this guy, when I lived in media, he would try to charge you for copies that he made wrong. You like, just the darkness, put it on the thing, and he'd cut, and it'd be crooked. And it was like, you know, 20 cents a copy or some shit like that, right?
Sure.
So I could not wait to not go down there and deal with that asshole, right? And so that allowed me then another 4 hours of work, because if I had to go by 3:30, I could work to 8:30 in time to drive to FedEx at the airport. So that might be another page, you know.
At the airport, that's hardcore.
Yeah, yeah.
It never came down to that for me, but it was always like sliding into the FedEx office at like 7:55.
Yes.
Getting that stink eye from the clerk.
Yeah. I would go. I had it timed so that I could drive from my house. I knew how to catch all the lights, and then that last 2-mile stretch from Island Avenue to the FedEx thing, I'd be 100 miles an hour, like,
I'm picturing you on the runway.
Yeah, you know, and then like literally pull right up, run up the steps, go in before they turn the sign around on the door.
It's like, come on.
Yeah, and I think even once I was like, come on, man. Opened up the door. Yeah.
There's on the way to the airport out this way, when you headed towards the Platte Bridge, there's a sign that says, "Don't fly to the airport.
Yeah,
slow down."
Nice.
They put that sign there for you, Manly.
Yeah, I mean, I could drive there in like 15. I could drive there in 15 minutes asleep. I was so, that was my drill for years, is driving to the airport. Or I'd have to go the next morning, 30th Street Station, and there was a same day delivery service. But that shit was expensive. It was like $70 or something, and they would take it by hand to New York and take it to the offices. So, you know,
and that's $70 in 80s money.
yeah. You know, I stopped using them years and years and decades ago, because now everybody does everything through the internet. So y'all kids don't know nothing about driving 100 miles an hour after 3 days with no sleep to finish a deadline to the airport, and then rewarding yourself with some nice gaseous Taco Bell.
I was you going to say rewarding yourself with sleep.
And then, yeah, your Taco Bell and then your Odin sleep. You know,
kids don't know about rewarding yourself with a can of Tab,
right?
And,
exactly. Oh,
a hot Sanka.
Yeah,
kids don't know.
I don't. I miss those days of the business, of the work. I don't miss driving 100 miles an hour with 3 days and no sleep and coffee jitters to the airport. But that era of work was great because it's funny because I was just talking to Blevins about this yesterday. If you were short, if you had a medical emergency, you needed some extra. One phone call, one trip to the office, you could pick up a job. It was never a problem to find. It was never a problem to find work at that time. So we just that's another thing that's just so very different today because you can't go up to the offices, you can't walk down or walk through the bullpen, and somebody goes, "Hey,"
That's wild.
And you're talking about working on a comic that sold like hotcakes. That's also kind of unusual nowadays.
Buttons, hotcakes.
Yeah, I mean those G.I. Joe comics and those Transformers comics sold like crazy. I think my first royalty check on that Transformers issue was like over $4,000, and that's $4,000 in like 1985 money, right? So that was that I got more in royalties than I got for drawing. Probably like a couple times more than I got drawing because I think my page rate was starting page rate tomorrow was 75 a page. So I got several times more in royalties than I got paid for drawing.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I told you part of our lore. I think my first comic that I bought and paid attention to that wasn't 3 issues with the covers ripped off, I think was one of your issues of Transformers, because I got like led by the nose in the comics from the cartoons, like the after school cartoons. And man, what a triangle of death that they made with those cartoons and toys and commercials in the comics. Man, you weren't escaping that.
And you could find those comics like in just any weird random place.
Yeah. They're easy to find. That was another thing. It was very easy to find.
Toys R Us. You know how many people have told me that they used to buy comics at Toys R Us?
Yeah.
And now there's no more Toys R Us.
So they're starting to reopen slowly. They have them in airport terminals. So they're like super, like the size of
the giraffes over there. Hey kid, come here.
What
I got over here. Yeah, look at the I got your Optimus Prime right here. Yeah. Strawberry shortcake.
Kids love going to the airport.
Yeah, actually, you're funny. You're right. Big thrill. When we were a kid, a couple of times my dad took my brother and me. We'd go out to the airport in Detroit, and you could park at like the end of the runway, so you could have the planes go right over. That was pretty cool.
That's such a safety risk. I don't even know if you could get close to the gate anymore.
I remember the old Detroit before they built the other one on 94, the old one. I remember as a kid, they actually had an observation deck. Now it would just be filled with snipers or something. It would be filled with people throwing rocks or laser pointer trying to hit the pilot in the eye with the laser pointer.
I thought that somebody was going to say the Magic Works Night facsimile machine. It didn't happen.
Oh, I remember mine. In fact, a couple years ago, I threw out a couple rolls of that.
What, the thermal paper?
That thermal paper that kind of turns. Well, then you got the You had the thermal paper, and then you got the plain paper. That was the big revolution, is getting the plain paper fax machine.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I was working on Superman, when I was working for the whole time I was working for Warner Brothers, I was using the fax machine. I would draw it, and then I would Xerox it, and I would run my rough boards or my storyboards, and I always had to call the director to make sure that they had enough paper in the fax machine so it wouldn't run out.
Because it would just ping, and that like it
would just stop.
It would just stop.
It would just stop, which meant that either it ran out of the paper, or ran out of the paper and the memory was full. This was like before everybody converted over to doing everything on the internet. There was the internet, but you would have to scan it, email it, then somebody would have to print it out, right? You'd have to download it and then print it out. And they hadn't quite shuffled everything over. By the end, everybody was, I think the last board, I stopped boarding on paper in Secret Saturdays, but Blevins switched over to Storyboard Pro. So if you're doing it now, but I really liked working on paper.
Was there ever a market for those storyboards, Mike?
I'm sure. I still have a few of my storyboards. They used to make you put them in the FedEx box and send them to Warner Brothers, but I'm sure they probably all got thrown in the garbage.
Right.
But I started keeping some of mine. I would just send them Xeroxes.
What do you think? Have you heard about this? Some controversy with regarding Magic the Gathering. It's a segue about original art and digital art, which might be a segue into where we're going. But they were talking about how they were requesting artists work digital only to reduce to eliminate the existence of production artwork of any kind, any physical artwork. I think that's a terrible precedent and almost mean-spirited.
So, and that's to eliminate there being an aftermarket for the work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys in comics, like Art Adams and like Mignola and Adam Hughes, and those guys I know that supposedly sold jobs before they were done, and that's how they made their living, because they were not like a John Buscema or a Gil Kane. They're not going to sit down and draw like 3 comics in a month. So they made their living by actually selling their artwork. That was a big thing for them, because they weren't really fast.
And because the page rates hadn't increased with inflation or with anything.
They basically page rates basically stopped for 99.9% of people in the mid-90s. That was my last page rate increase. Occasionally, you might be able to negotiate something on a job, but basically, because comic books started losing sales in the mid-90s. Basically, when Superman came back in Capital City, when Pluie, that eliminated a ton of comic book stores that were not picked up by Diamond. So the second issue of Action Planet, my self-published thing, Capital City blew up, and immediately the numbers on my books went in half.
Wow.
Because a lot of the people that were buying, were Capital City. Most people I know, our last real effective page rate. Again, maybe Alex Ross gets a little bit more, maybe Adam Hughes, but those guys don't draw interiors; they do covers. And as we had Steve Root on here a couple of weeks ago, one of the reasons why he's not doing covers for them is because they're not paying cover rate anymore.
Right.
Probably a guy like Alex can draw it, make a poster of it, sell it, and make a lot of money. Right? Do an art of book or whatever. But that's one of the reasons why 90% of the people you saw working in the 90s are not drawing comic books anymore. They may do covers. I mean, I think the only guy really left doing it is Eric Larson on the Dragon, right? And a few other people. But, I mean, like, in the stores every month,
right?
20 pages of new work by somebody. You can't name 5 guys. Maybe him and John Romita. And, John's a machine. So, so the rates are not there because the sales are not there. If you're selling 250,000 copies of something, oh yeah, you don't got to worry. You got plenty of money. If you're selling 25,000 with inflation, if people don't really think about it, my page rate in 94 was great. That page rate now, 30 years later, if you don't get a raise in 30 years, it's not great anymore. Right?
Yeah.
On that cheery thought, let's start the show. Guys,
pencil down.
Pencil down. Good night. I'm gonna go walk my dog. Good night. Guys, this has been the somebody said the white whale. I think I saw that on Mike's Facebook.
The white whale
of topics that we're about to get into. Guys, we have been doing this lovely program for 7 years. Right, Mike? 7?
More than 7 now, because we passed our podiversary.
Come on, man. So we've been doing this for a while, right? And one of the things I like about kind of touching on business and kind of how the what do you call the touchdown pole thing at in the end zone?
The goalpost?
The goalpost, yes. Thank you.
I know sport.
My sports ball. The goalposts keep moving.
The zoning logs, the wind logs,
the cyber posts keep changing and moving, and once every episode, someone in the chat asks something about AI. Hey guys, what do you think about AI?
And then there's 2 in the head.
Head heavy, right? And it's such a giant conversation. There's no way we could just like press pause on the show and go, you know what I think about AI? Like we'd still be here like 5 days later. So during our thoughts of doing deep dives, this is another part of the deep dive series. We're going to spend some time talking about artificial intelligence and what it means to creatives. I don't think there's a way we could do this in one episode. We're going to have a very special guest next week to further the conversation. I'll leave that up to a surprise till the end, and I'll tell you more about it. But I thought, hold on, I gotta put Steve's graphic on here. I thought this would be a great space to just do the thing, right? Let's talk about it. So I know that, as I say about a lot of our episodes, if somebody asks you how you make comics, you say you sit down and make a comic, the end, credits roll. you know, Michael Wolff production. All these things are very easy answers, and I think with our kind of conversations about AI, the easy answer is it's evil, don't use it, and turn the page. But it's so much deeper than that, and it's kind of penetrated what we're doing or trying to accomplish in so many different ways. The guys got together and thought, what are we going to call this episode? And navigating AI just made a lot of sense. And Mike said in his kind of primer to the episode, it's not going away. So how are we going to kind of make this work or survive it?
They wanted to go away, but it's not going away.
Right. So I started to prime the pump a little bit in the chat, and I asked the chat, and Sean Shai answered, how do you feel about AI? I just put that in the chat, and I'm already getting some really interesting conversations. So, and what I was thinking about as I'm kind of over-explaining what we're doing here is that I just don't want this to be a shit fest, because we can all kind of just jump on the pile of bones and stomp on it. But I think we can find some takeaways out of these conversations that might be helpful to everyone. I don't know, Steve, how do you feel about these conversations we're about to have?
I think it's a thing where I explaining what it is and the damage it's doing, and that it's basic. I think we could spend a little time talking about it broadly, but it's for the most part, the conversation is where do we go from here? And that's why, that okay, it's there. So what do you do? How do we proceed knowing that this thing's out there without spending our entire time? I do think it's cathartic to talk about, to dump on it, but also it's also important to distinguish that AI means different things, and that the tech world and the investment world is calling everything AI, which a lot of it isn't. They're slapping it on everything. Your toaster is going to you're going to get an AI enhanced toaster, and it's not that. It's just they'll raise more capital if they call it that. Everything that used to be a smart fridge would now be an AI for it's so since they're slapping it on everything, and it's not commander data, it's not real artificial intelligence, it's just this other thing. I don't want to. It's having a conversation with some indie creators, even calling it. I was trying to be reductive. I was like, how far back do you want to go? Do you want to call a calculator AI?
Right.
If you don't want to do 2 + 2, if you don't want to go through the labor of that, is that AI? And they were like, yeah. So okay, so that's how reductive they want to make it. But usually I feel like people who are for it have a kind of commercial agenda or a production oriented agenda. And some of them are colleagues of ours. So, and I have colleagues who speak to its virtue, who honestly believe it has that it provides merit. And those are people who I don't agree with, but I don't want to demonize them or lose them in this conversation when we can talk about, when I think we need to engage them and explain in some, this is maybe not the forum for that, to discuss its downsides, its big downsides. Am I belaboring a point?
No, I think it all makes sense. It's all connected. Mike, you want to put something on that?
Well, when we were initially talking about that, I mean, I've been following this like everybody for 3 years. In 3 years, and I've sent you guys, you see these. I saw one the other day, like a Star Wars thing that was obviously made with all AI. And it was really, really well done, right? It's here, and there's a lot of fans doing it. Now, I don't think you're going to, a fan making a film of Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or something. There's the ecological and economical toll if you unemploy people or you distress the environment, which unemploys people and has a ripple effect, right? I think if you're and the other thing is human nature says, because I'm seeing all these other things, is the result of basically the smartphone. That is a trickle-down effect that people were not necessarily 10, 15, 2010. They were not able to predict the consequences that young people are suffering now, which is going to create problems for society as the people who are afflicted by these various conditions go into the workforce. So we're already seeing, I mean, I just, my friend Mimi just sent me a thing right before we went on that Jorge Gutierrez, famous, well-known animation director, is just doing a new AI show with Amazon. So Amazon is starting to push AI animated shows, right? Which is not good for animation because that means it's going to be less people, less animators, less people working. That's not good for artists. So the way I look at it is that these big corporations are trying to do, they're forcing it on us every way, every day. I mean, Facebook, you go on Facebook, it's so junky now because there's so much AI on it, and they're embedding ads within ads. Even in fan groups, chewed out a couple people in the last. I'm usually a pretty chill guy, but you go on say like a group like the John Buscema group, and people are doing fan art using AI, which I find honestly an insult to a person like John Buscema who built his skills, right? To me, the main thing about artists is we do this because we love it first. And your passion and your interest in building your skill to get to your goal is something that's fundamentally important, I think, in this discussion. Because as a young artist, I wanted to have the skill set of my heroes so that I could do work that was like the work that I admired. That is completely different than if I can like scan every drawing that Richard Corbin did and say, well, I want a Richard Corbin style drawing of the Hulk, fighting the Thing in New York City, and then like it's done. I didn't earn any of that. I'm sure it's getting better and better and better. I'm sure within a couple of years you'll be able to do something that, we're highly visually literate people. We're getting to the point now. It's going to be very, very hard, even for people like us, to distinguish what is AI. And I guess my point is, it's one thing to work hard because you want to have the skill. You want to have the ability. But now I see people coming along, which is what people do when there's some new thing, and they can go, like, I don't have to go to the gym to build, and I don't have to suffer. I can just, and I'm satisfied. I made this thing that I like. I think it's pretty cool. You're starting to see that, we had the thing with the Eisners this year where there was no policy against it. So an artist used it. And the project was nominated, which people are very upset about. And I think we're coming to the line in the sand thing where you're going to have people like, I want to do this because I want to be able to do it, as opposed to I want to use this to give me what I want, when I want, how I want. That is not a artistic impulse. That is a selfish impulse. Now if you're using AI to read charts, a medical chart, and it can somehow detect pancreatic cancer early, I think that's a fantastic thing. But I think when you want, if you want to use even more than comics, the comics is like low man on the totem pole. You want to really see how pernicious and evil this is. Look at what's happening to the music industry. Look at what's happening to music schools, right? And it's even starting to happen in art schools, where the school itself is not fighting and training people. It's saying, hey, learn to use AI to make your music. Not about it, not how to get as good at playing music as Dizzy Gillespie or John Williams or whoever, right? It's saying like, hey, you want to be able to be Dizzy Gillespie? Well, then just say, I want to be Dizzy Gillespie, right? What is that going to do to education? What is that going to do to standards? What is that going to do to, I think, the human imagination and the desire, the thing that really defines the qualities of society. It's the arts, it's the creativity, it's the songs, it's the architecture, it's the building, it's always that we remember. And so I think the insidious part is it doesn't seem like you're hurting anybody when you're doing it. But if Amazon comes along now and makes a film or makes a TV show that you need 4 people to make, that's not good for all the people who spent all the years going and studying and being passionate about being an animator. It's not good for us.
One other Go ahead, man. Finish your thought.
And then the final thing is, it's always an approximation. I want this thing, and it makes this thing, and you settle for it. Yeah, I like that Captain America fighting Superman Avengers thing. Yeah. Now, that's not exactly what you would have done if you had done it yourself, and you had made the Avengers, or you had animated it, or you'd hire the actors. Yeah, you know, it's a pretty good approximation. That is deadly for creativity. That is deadly for society. When you just go, that's good enough. You know, that's close enough. I think that's just an awful thing for humanity.
Well, did you want to jump in, Jamar?
No, go ahead, Steve. I'll come back around.
One of the things that's challenging right now is that because the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing, a lot of people who are struggling to be creative and try to make a living in the arts or in any kind of creative field. I see this a lot in the TTRPG space. And what you're talking about with some of the other comments here, talking about like good enough, or what the tech world would call the MVP, a minimum viable product. The idea that there is it's a good enough thing. And you can see this in the role-playing game space because, you know, what AI was particularly good at early on was kind of this grotesque thing. Like suddenly extra fingers is kind of, if you're doing Cthulhu, if you're doing Lovecraftian stuff, extra fingers and extra eyes is perfect. So it lent itself in the TTRPG space, and it put a lot of, and it at a thumbnail size on a browser, it looks, wow, that's interesting. But you know, these people are these creators, these publishers, let's put it that way, downloaders. They're downloading, they're asking, they're indicating a prompt, they're entering a prompt and getting this thing back, which is to me the equivalent of going to a diner. This might border on dunking on it. Sorry, Jamar, but it's like equivalent of going to the diner and saying, "Give me the chef's special," getting the chef's special, taking a photograph of it, and then saying, "Look what I created," because they asked for it. It didn't exist until they asked for it, but then it got made, and now they're taking credit for its creation. They couldn't make it again if they tried, but look what they did. It's hard given that the people who feel that is creative, because there's a rush when you ask for this thing that you think is original, it gets created, and you feel like you were the instigator of that apparent originality. So they're getting the juice we get when we create something, when we sit back from a drawing. People who haven't worked at that, never paid the dues or whatever rent we want to put on it, are getting that. We're telling them they're bad people. And that's one of the reasons why dunking on them, it feels mean.
But they're not getting it because they didn't earn it. You know, it's like if you really worked hard and suddenly in the process of your creative struggle, you go to the next level, you can't fake that earn. You can have your 5-minute little like, oh, I got this thing, and it made this thing to look like it, but it's not an actual physical process.
Do you think it'll burn out? Do you think that buzz will burn out? My hope is that they ask for these things a million times. They keep getting these things. Yes, there were some people making money from it, so that'll always be their kind of treat, their reward for doing this thing. But if it is the rush of getting this return, I think it'll go away, because our rush is always kind of escaping us. We're always having to work a little harder to get to impress ourselves with our next illustration. Like, oh man, that, you know, the Chasing Amy line, that's a really good lamppost. You know, that the kind of thing that, you know, only we appreciate, that little weirdness that, man.
Well, you know, that's actually what I think drives most creatives, right? Is those little victories, those little defeats. Again, I think that's you can't manufacture that. You know, it's just like if you could put on a suit that every time you went on the field you scored a touchdown, you would get bored.
Right.
You would get bored, right? But when everybody can do it, also, then everybody's equal, right? And the one thing about the AI stuff, because it's all feeding off of everything else that has been come before, you don't get anything really original. You just get to use your chef analogy, all you're doing is going into the garbage and reconstituting the stuff and going, hey, look, I made a new plate of food, but no, you're not going to get a new recipe, right? And I think, again, there's a moral there. You also can't separate the moral part of it. AI data centers and what it's doing to the ecology, what it's going to do to the economy. What do you do when one of these big companies, they build something the size of Manhattan and then they blow a tire? What is that going to do, right?
Yeah.
I just think that it's the falseness of it, but the immediate satisfaction is probably the most. You can argue about stealing, and everybody steals. Everybody did LimeWire. Everybody did Napster, right? But what it's doing to the music industry and musicians now is basically robbing these people of serious income. So, going forward, everybody loves music. The amount of streamers that are all AI on all these platforms is increasing exponentially. Within a couple of years, it'll be 4 or 5 times as many streamers as there are creative people, true original creative people. And the same thing would happen to comics tomorrow. If they could do it, and you could imitate any of your favorite artists, they would immediately be doing, Todd or John, Mike Mignola. There would be people immediately doing it. Would be immediately making comics. Valiant is doing comics using AI. I just saw the other day.
Well, so in terms of what to do about that, I feel as though there has to be. You can't support it. You can't give it a nickel. You can't.
People are giving it.
But they have to understand why. And if you have to shame them out of it, I think I said that when we very first brought this up. How do we stop it? Like 4 years ago. How do you bring it? Shame. You have to shame people out of it. You can't use it. You can't use it. You can't use it in, again, AI is a range of things. But there are certain ones which are specifically harmful to the creative community. And if allegedly my 3D printer has an AI spaghetti detector. So if the printer head starts spinning out, allegedly this AI, it's not AI. It's just a thing looking for a template. If it matches the template, it turns the printer off.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that they're going to call AI. It's not a blanket. It's not, like you said, for medical devices, there are people who complain about the Google glasses being particularly used by perverts, but also used by the vision impaired.
Like you couldn't figure out that would happen.
But the vision impaired are able to ask their glasses, "What am I looking at?" And it will tell them. And so you can't. You can't damn the thing. You have to damn it in context. And so if the context is an application in which will rob creators of the livelihood, as long as we're in the system as it exists now, if it's going to rob creators of their livelihoods, we have to stand in solidarity with fellow creators and not give them a penny.
Right. So when Amazon makes a new animated, just today greenlights some new animated series, realistically, nobody should support that because that's hurting.
Agreed. Cancel your Prime membership. As Chris is pointing out, people have tried to shame the comics pirates, but I also agree, like with shaming Kickstarter. I've left Kickstarter because they allow AI on their platform, but there's not but
they just brought porn back, Steve.
But when it's AI porn, I'll be very offended.
Well, there is AI porn now, right?
Well, of course there is. Of course,
right?
Yeah, that's early adopters.
Right? So now you can go and you can make your AI porn of any your weirdest fan.
Not now though. We're streaming for another 45 minutes.
My thing is that it's so pernicious because there's so many people every day working to push this stuff, that you don't realize the water level is constantly going up. Right? We're literally drowning in this stuff every day, which then makes any format we use, whether any internet format, any printer, any platform, this thing is probably using AI, right? Everything we're using is using AI, but it's going to literally end up unemploying or possibly making the next 15 or 20 years really difficult for people who are either mid-career or trying to build a career.
Yes.
To gain purchase. And I know many younger artists. So like all the kids' books, if you go on Amazon, the amount of kids' books that you see that are all generated by AI it's insane,
yeah.
Right? Comics has always been like the last man to do everything. They were the last to go to any kind of tech, digital. Was always way behind, but I do believe within the period of a couple of years, we're going to get to the point where you're going to be able to have an AI company, AI comics, will be able to do something in the style of any popular artist, and I believe that 95% of people will be satisfied with it because they just want the ice cream. They don't fucking care how it's made, and that's the most pernicious part of this, is that people who say that they are fans, that has been my argument on several of these message boards, it's like the people who say they're a fan of something will do something that the very artists that they say that they're a fan of would actually probably find offensive. But they get that fix. They get that fix.
Sure.
And most people, that's just what they want. They just want what they want. If I can flip the switch and get more Bugs Bunny or more Pikachu or more whatever I want, I don't know how this stuff. They think that everything's made by a computer. Most people think in animation everything is made by a computer anyway. They don't think that it's like there's a person actually animating a puppet. They actually think you just go like computer, Toy Story, and it just goes and makes.
It comes out of its mouth like.
Yeah, like you want more Toy Stories? Okay, yeah, exactly. You know, people don't. One of the worst things about what I call the Hollywooding of art and craft is that most people have a Hollywood idea of either the artist is the struggling. You know, it's not the real appreciation of craft. It's when it comes to the visual arts, the things like drawing and painting. Maybe some people watched, Bob Ross, and that gives them a little glimpse of a very particular type of painting for entertainment. Not how to really do a landscape painting. Right? They're like, go outside and look at the fucking Grand Canyon, and then take something like peanut butter on something that feels like your bedspread, and make a painting, right? It's entertainment, right? It's all the struggles and all the impurities and everything's all been cooked out of it. Again, that's what AI does. It cooks all the struggle out. It just gives you the finished product, right? Struggle is what defines greatness. It's what builds greatness, is the struggle. If you remove the struggle, then it has no value. It's all fake. You can't remove the struggle. But people constantly, that's humanity. Humanity wants to constantly remove the struggle. As soon as fucking possible, they want to remove the struggle. What do most people ask you? Right? You get the same questions. Where do your ideas come from? How do you do this thing? It's all the basic things. And if you can sell a tape that goes like, hey, tomorrow you can draw like Jim Lee without the struggle, take my money.
So you upload that into your neck core, like the Matrix.
Yeah, I don't. If you don't struggle, you don't value. You know, and again, I don't think anybody's going to come back and look. I just saw this Avengers JLA thing the other day. Now, somebody spent a lot of time to do this, and it was bad. The fighting was bad. The staging was bad. It was all very lame. All very flat, right? But some fan got a big fucking kick out of having Captain America fight Batman. It was bullshit because they don't know how to tell a story. They don't know how to pace or build up or anything, right? They don't know any of the stuff that makes it interesting. But I bet you 95% of the people that watch that thought.
Yeah, but to me, I feel like if the argument's going to be that there's a lost cause of the audience out there, and this genie's out of the bottle, this is here, deal with it, that kind of mentality, then if those folks are lost causes, then they're really lost causes. My concern is about the remainders and the folks like
and where's
the people we can communicate with, and I feel like that's the only. If that's only 10% of the creative community, sorry, what is that person got into trouble? If that's only 6.3%, was that the inverse number of their 5.3% of the children's book author? But if only 10% of the audience is available to us again, it doesn't take much for us to have a vibrant group of supporters. If we have 1,000 supporters willing to contribute to us, such as the Pencil to Pencil Patreon, then we can survive and thrive. But if it's out there, I feel like there's something AI can't do what I do. At the end of the day, it can't. You can ask it to draw like me. You can ask it to, but it's not going to come up with my next episode. It can't.
But it can make so much stuff that it can drown your shit out. That's the other side of it too.
That's what we've always been swimming in. There's infinite content. Everything that's come before us is still there and available, and here we are trying to add our stuff to the mix. And yes, there might be more of it produced, but that was always the curve. Us to keep doing our little thing our way. I feel like no one else can do it. And also, you talked about the struggle as being part of people don't want struggle. I think if there's two kids drawing in a playground, and you said, "Hey, kids, put those." They're having fun drawing, and you say, "Hey, put those crayons down. I've got a machine that'll do that for you."
Cool.
No, they wouldn't. They were drawing and having fun.
Wow.
Why have a machine take away your fun? There's a kernel of that eureka, that moment of creativity, that moment of realization, and I feel like that's
is joy.
What?
Suffering, I'm just saying that there's no joy. Struggle and suffering is joy when you achieve your goal. Right? People have a hard time with it, I think, with art. Because they tend to separate it from a physical process. You do martial arts, right? So there's a lot of struggle and a lot of hurt muscles and everything until you get to that point that, like William Shatner, you can light a board on fire and smash it, right? We don't have a problem with that with music when you can finally play. Sports, people really have a very, very, very hard time with it because, again, Hollywoodization is that you struggle and then you're on Broadway or your overnight success. I think part of the enjoyment is the struggle. I struggle every day, right? I have little victories every day, and I have little failures every day. That is part of the creative process. If it can only be joy, then that's artificial. And that ties into me to the whole the pernicious part of the AI, because it takes out the struggle. right? So you make your Avengers comic, or you make your film, or whatever you want. Okay. Right. And you may be happy with it, but you're not going to be happy with it like some drawing I can go back and look at 40 years ago and remember the victory that then I physically, mentally built on, right? I could show you something here. I think I've showed this before. Might have.
Like and subscribe.
Well, you guys can go ahead. I'll find it. But so, for me, it's you cannot separate that. That's actually the worst thing is to separate it. And you're not always going to have joy. You know, sometimes you're going to have defeat. And that's just part of the
creative process. I think so think about navigating, assuming these as these AI's out there, these waters are rising. How do you chart your course?
Well, I think if we're talking, our whole live stream is about creatives, right? And let's assume we're talking about creatives trying to navigate their way through a creative industry when everything is heading this direction. I think this is probably the first box on your paper is you have to have some sort of ethics. Like what is your moral compass through this? You know, what are you going to do when no one's looking, right? Because you see that. Oh, hold on. Give Mike the screen here.
So this is a comic from sometime in high school, probably say 16.
Wow.
Right. So this is one of those comics where I tell you where I would work out a little scenario and I would do my thumbnails, you know. You see the word balloon. I pasted up my word balloon with rubber cement. All right. So there's stuff on here that was a victory. And there was stuff on here that's just terrible. Right. But I couldn't get to where I am here without having done that. Right. Now, if I had used AI to do that, I would have, I wouldn't have learned anything. I could have done a job and it would have looked, I could say, do something and eventually, say I could, it'll give me something that would be close enough to satisfy me visually looking at it. But everything on this I earned. And again, there were some victories on this that weren't on the previous page. Right. And there was victories on the next page, right? And I didn't steal anything from anybody, right? I made that.
But the worry now is that the comic companies don't, soon enough, comic companies might not need artists, right? That's the main concern. That
yeah, you could get a stylist, let's say, right, to come in and stylize any one of us, just like on a film like Disney, they hired Mike Mignola to stylize Atlantis. Once you hire that, then you can say it can make the comic. It can draw the characters from any angle. It can interpolate. It can make the backgrounds in that style. It might not know storytelling. Again, storytelling is not something I believe you can try to teach it, but in my experience, you either naturally have it or you don't. That's why some directors can take something, and some comic artists can take something and interpret it in a way that's so exciting that nobody else could do it. Right? Nobody else could do what Kirby did in the 60s with Marvel. Nobody. There's nobody else who could do that. There's other guys who could draw better than him, you know, that had do color better than him. Nobody could do what he did. Nobody has done it since he did it. We're just all sort of like regurgitating what he did.
I know we're in the shadow. A lot of cartoonists are in the shadow of Kirby and Watterson and Schultz, and there's tons of icons. But I do feel like AI can't do what you do, Mike. I don't think it can.
Well, what I'm saying is, that's exactly right. But it can do it well enough to satisfy people, to make it work.
Yeah.
Right? And then what that does is, over time, a copy of 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 a copy.
Right. I often use the word regurgitation, or I've heard people call those regurgitation engines. So I don't want to say that just because we may be just because artists sample other artists or learn from other artists, a lot of the people who are proponents of that technology often say, well, isn't that just doing the same thing? And
no, because you know what? When I regurgitate, because it's my own personal observation.
You're technically, you're a human. I'm not going to put a label on you, Mike, but you're a human, and it ain't. And I do think like that's such a huge distinction that it's like comparing you to a photocopier. You know, it's
right.
Search results.
Right. And it's my personal aesthetic choice. Right? Like Kirby drew those square fingers. My personal aesthetic choice may be to never draw square fingers.
Right.
Right? But AI doesn't make choices like that. If you've seen, I've seen there's a guy on Instagram that does it. He'll make these little, he'll have an AI actor read lines, and he'll want it to read a certain way. You know, and I saw the one the other day where, you know, he keeps saying, well, I want you to be this way and then read the lines, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it can't interpret, right? Because all it's doing is grabbing from wherever and pulling this stuff together. It's not inventing. And the thing is if you had a style, a cartoon style, like Nancy, which was very restrictive kind of style, it could easily regurgitate Nancy. A lot easier to do that than Gene Colan or something, or Mobius, right?
Or something with a specific style guide, like a Garfield.
Right.
Something with like a.
Could it write? Does it know what a funny drawing is?
And I feel as though they're also interested, kind of like those kind of low key panels that it might be able to do, but there are moments of brilliant cartooning which it couldn't. Right? There's this kind of explosions, those kind of moments of genius.
When to put the pause in, when not to put the pause in, all that kind of stuff. Again, to me, that's also part of it. It's not just the drawing. It's why the drawing, and if the drawing, and how the drawing. Again, like I watched that Avengers thing, right? It's got the lighting in the sky and the shine and the thing and it's got all that surface stuff. But the guts of it was not, there was no tension, right? It was not good storytelling. But again, most people are satisfied with mediocre storytelling because most storytelling is mediocre, right? And to me, the dangerous part is if this becomes easier and easier to make, then more and more stuff becomes worse. It's easier to make that, and it crowds out and makes the space flooded with more mediocre stuff. It struggles for it's going to be harder for publishers, right? It's going to be harder for bookstores. It's even going to be harder for you to sort through this. It's already harder on Google, right? Just to do your Google, or you go on Pinterest, and it's all AI now, right? It's a lot of AI on there. So you have to try to go like, I don't want AI, right? It's just all the stuff. It's just another layer of shit is basically what I'm saying. You know, and the younger you are, the more that's normal. It's not like, well, this is different. You know, I'm over 50, so it's all different. I've got 50 years of that not being the way. You're coming up and that's the way. Your brain may not even think of these other solutions because you're not exposed. I think that's the downside, because it makes it very easy to cheat, makes it easier to use these solutions, which may not really be the best solutions for you, but you will be satisfied with that solution because it's easier. That's a bad thing.
Let's not act like this is so brand new, because there's always been Spark Notes. They called them something else when we were young. You know, there's always been somebody looking for a shortcut.
Sure.
You know,
But a shortcut could not happen.
Yeah, but the shortcuts weren't getting booed in commencement addresses. The Spark Notes. So I wouldn't write off the next generation as much, but like I do think I saw in the chat here, like some people are showing, you know, show your work. You know, they don't want to see just the finished piece. Show your process. There's an artist I follow who I think when Midjourney first came out, their work took a huge leap in polish.
They just got good, Steve. Don't be a hater.
And then when the AI detectors came out and it became kind of a thing that people were like start running things through AI detection, suddenly that person's work reverted to their old style. I feel like that's a win. I also you know, never mention their name, but you know, it feels like that is, they were happy to take the bow and get the upvotes for the thing that wasn't 100% them. But they weren't going to do it at the cost of their reputation.
They were being the Milli Vanilli of the.
Yeah, and so they did the right thing, and I think moderated their and eliminated that, removed it from their process, and I think that's a good thing. I do think we have to condemn it in order to mitigate it, but if it's out there, and it seems like we're denigrating the audience as much as we're denigrating AI.
Well, again, like, you know, right?
These people will like anything, and I'm not entirely sure.
There is it's a mirror, right? A lot of people complain about the movies on TV and the music that's coming out, but I always say it's really a mirror, because you know there is good music out there. You can go on Spotify and I find a lot of good music, real musicians, a lot of good stuff on Spotify. But you have to have the kind of mindset and the personality that goes, I'm going to go look for the unusual. I'm interested in the unusual. And that is not most people. Most people don't have the personality. Like I said, when I was a kid, let's talk about this the other day. When I was a kid, I would go to old bookstores. And one of the things that would happen when you go to an old bookstore is you would find a lot of stuff you didn't like, and you weren't interested in. Right. But all of a sudden, you might find somebody like, oh, what's this? That made what you found more valuable. One, it wasn't curated. You were curating your experience. Anytime you curate your experience, you add value to your life, whether you're aware of it at the moment or not. And then what you find has more value because you had to spend all this time searching. So you define you sharpen your interests, right? You may come across something that may also be a revelation to you that you would not have found if you're just on Instagram. Like, I love Instagram. I find new artists every day, right? But it's curated for me. And therefore, because I'm old, I have the old ways of looking and thinking and discerning. If you're young and it's just an endless scroll, then nothing is precious. There's no struggle. You didn't have to take that Friday and go through 3 old bookstores and come away with like one thing you liked. You saw a million things. That has a real downside for us as visual artists, because it basically makes each image, even if you like it and even if it's good, in aggregate just less valuable because there's so many images, right? And so if you're a young person and you like something on if I go on Instagram and I look at 2 or 3 things, blah, 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 immediately the algorithm adjusts. So if I go find 5 pictures of Betty Page, all of a sudden I'm getting a lot more like pinup and photography and 50s stuff. And if I go look at a bunch of old cars, all of a sudden I get a bunch more old cars or whatever. Again, it's not doing it because I'm deciding I'm doing it. It's doing it to get you to pay more attention and to spend more time, right? It's a different set of values. And the younger you are, I think the more dangerous that is to you as a person, because it happens and you don't realize, right? I think the accident is important. The accident in your life is very, very important. I cannot probably name all the fortunate accidents or even remember all the fortunate accidents for me as an artist in my development, right? You go into a bookstore. I remember the day I found out about Franklin Booth because I was in a bookstore in Ann Arbor going through a bunch of old magazines and I saw this pen and ink illustration by Franklin Booth. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I didn't see another drawing by that guy probably until I was in my 20s. That's that same guy I saw when I was 13. And then I was able to connect that to what Bernie Wrightson was doing on Frankenstein. Right? So I was able to make a connection, and from that, you can follow. The good thing about the internet is if you do make a connection like that, now it's actually easier to find a collection of Franklin Booth. There's books on Franklin Booth that there were not when I was a kid. But if I had not found that image in that magazine by accident, he may have been a person that, I may have never seen that guy. Or seen him later and it may not have had the impact on me that it did.
Guys, before we run out of time, I want to make sure that we're kind of like building to an exit ramp here. Our good buddy Donna Lewis. Hey, Donna, welcome to the chat. Donna asks, what if AI can help you build your skill faster? I think it's a very honest question to ask in these trying times. Steve, we'll start with Steve.
It can in some ways, depending on. It's not saying AI image generation necessarily, but I've heard from people who said, I was trying to figure out this program and I asked AI and it told me how to do something. And I think as search engines fail, somehow, often intentionally, like people said that Google search results have been intentionally weakened in order to keep you on the platform longer. Apparently that was a study that was done or a report that was made that in order, so they made them so as the search engines, intentionally or otherwise, are less effective, that a AI answer, hallucinations notwithstanding, can be helpful, especially if it is something which is fairly common, like if it's ingested the manual of a book, right? You can have a natural language instant answer to your question. So it can be, so in terms of using software, I've heard it used in that fashion. I've heard educators have used it to create syllabuses. Syllabi. I worry about that. But it's often I understand it's being used in a first draft way. Again, I don't like that. I mean, I think the reason why someone hires me to write something, I'm designing a game book right now. They want me to do it, and I want my voice in every sentence, right? I feel like if I'm just simply there massaging machine results, I don't want to be an editor. I want this by Steve Conley. I don't want this, regurgitated. So, and focusing on Donna's question, I do think it can teach you those things. I don't think it'll tell you how to hold a pencil. In terms of art, I don't know how it can help build your skills faster. But in terms of technical, I don't know how to unjam your printer. I bet it might have a pretty good answer.
Yeah, I think it depends upon what do you mean by skill?
Yeah, and I don't know by faster. I do know like sometimes these you know some of the guidebooks or some of the actual technical manuals can be quite dense and difficult to handle. But I have heard it used in that context.
Yeah, I think it just to me depends upon skill.
And
right?
one of the things that was pointed out by a computer scientist, I saw this quoted and requoted. It's that AI is not trying to give you an answer; it's trying to give you what sounds like the answer. It's trying to keep you engaged. And so it doesn't know what's an answer. It doesn't know the thing, which is why when you say that's incorrect, it will apologize and can give you the same exact answer a few minutes later. So it's not, it's not reliable. I wouldn't trust it on my taxes or for looking, reviewing a contract.
Right.
But
so it's effectively kind of like wearing down our edges so we don't question things. And as people get lazier, it's easier to just accept the gospel from whatever the prompt kicks back to you.
And because it's ingesting as much garbage, because it's like I'm the conversation I had with a colleague who is for it. I'm like, no, I don't like it because it's ingesting. It might be ingesting their argument was that this is brought in all the content, all of human knowledge. It's the Library of Alexandria in one search box, and I was like, it's also 4chan.
Right, exactly. It's also people who believe that Elvis and Bigfoot are still alive, right?
It's Reddit, and
right?
It's Usenet archives.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to build, let's just take something very simple. Like, say you wanted to draw my friend the skull, right? Now you can look at the skull, grab a sketchbook, and you can sketch and sketch and sketch, and maybe there's a lot of errors in your drawing, a lot of errors in your process. Or you can get a book that says, oh, here's the skull from these different angles, and you do this, and it'll give you like a little recipe of how to draw a skull, right? And you can read that. But that's not going to teach you how to draw a skull. It shows you a formula, a recipe, or a process. The only way you learn to draw the skull is you actually sit down and you draw the skull over and over, sometimes referencing those processes, right, until you put the information through practice into your head that you're able to do either something like draw the skull from memory or improve things, your approach, drawing something from observation. Because those are two completely different processes. It's one to look at something and to interpret it. And it's also another thing to draw it from information. The only way information goes into your head is through habitual practice. AI cannot cheat practice. AI could show you 1,000 little videos of how to do it. That will not improve your process.
Right.
The only way you improve your process is by actually practicing the process.
Yeah, and if there's no way AI is going to take the 10,000 hour rule and make it the 500 hour rule.
No. Like I just showed you guys that page, right? So that page is probably 50 years old or pretty close to it. How many pages did I draw after that before I got to be a professional? And how many pages have I drawn since I became a professional, right? And so if I sit down today and I start doing a drawing, it's all connected. It's all connected all the way back to that page and to the pages that were before that were not as good as that. There's no way to skip the process. And honestly, I think if you don't enjoy the process, it'll never happen. Right. Because if you don't enjoy the struggle and you don't enjoy the process, you don't enjoy the victory, you won't do it enough. You won't stay at it. You won't be habitual enough. That's the other thing, right? AI removes that, right? It's not like, oh, the last time I drew a 2 square, or the last time I I've been helping a friend work on pages and samples, and one of the things I mentioned to him about is how he tends to be a little heavy-handed when he draws. That's my observation. You're not going to get that from somebody who doesn't draw. AI is not going to tell you about being heavy-handed, right? It's not going to probably be able to look at your drawing and evaluate the things that I could look at your drawing and evaluate, or something that you might. Like I said the other, in speaking to him the other day, one of the things I learned about inking when I was inking Daredevil pages over John Romita Jr. and Al Williamson Studio, I'm using the same kind of pen point, and I was a little frustrated in that I wasn't getting the same kind of lines. And then I observed how Al held his pen. I was holding my pen closer. Al was holding his pen further back. Right? I was holding it up here. He was holding it back here. By him holding it back there, it gave a different character to his line. That is something that AI will never know, never observe, and never be able to teach you. And art is full of stuff like that. It's full of stuff like that.
I would marvel at what AI would produce if it was asked to make one of those art instruction books. You know, like the kind of nightmarish. So if they ask you a question about how do you improve your skills faster, I'd be hard pressed to see how it could help with your art.
You know, one of the things I always say to students, because you get this kind of, how do I make my style? You know, when you're young and you're building, everyone's really obsessed with style and how to be faster and all that stuff. And the thing is that you can't really be faster than you are. That happens through the natural process of your practice. Because, you know, I'm faster today than I was when I was 23, and I was probably a little bit faster when I was 23 than when I did that page I showed you guys.
Right.
I could not have built that speed without doing the regular work. I think you have to settle into the practice of working and enjoying the work. Enjoying the work and enjoying the process and enjoying the struggle. And anything like AI that removes that is not going to make you stronger. You know, it's not going to make you better, and it's never going to make you unique. You do not see any kind of unique thing with AI, right? So now, if you had an artist who had an artistic sensibility, was like an art director and knew a bunch of stuff, that person probably could take something like AI, and you know, you'd probably have to hammer at it. And still, maybe, again, you would never get exactly what you could do. At a certain point, you go like, well, I guess this is all the machine's going to, I'm just getting a slightly different permutation of what I got before, right? So you might have to go in there by hand and actually do the thing that's undefinable, right? Everything that AI gives you has already been defined. If you're looking for something undefinable, it's not going to be able to give you that because it's not that type of process.
There it is. You know, that we could keep talking for like another 3 hours.
We should pick this up next week.
I think we should, Steve. You read my mind. Guys, next week we're going to have our good buddy Kaz Winness. Oh man, I'm always messing stuff up. Kaz is going to be on Pencil to Pencil as our guest talking head, our guest fourth square, because she has lots of really great takes on where we're headed with this, especially in children's literature and book and children's publishing. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you're missing out. She's a font of information and a true resource. And she agreed that she'd love to come on next week and we could talk more about AI and what it's doing to the publishing arena. Somebody in the chat mentioned there was I think it was a Target ad where they churned through a bunch of Scholastic book covers for their ad, and like Captain Underpants is like 90 fingers.
Yeah.
And it's like, you already had the book cover. What was the point of doing that? You know what I'm saying? And those conversations are really interesting to me, and I think they're worth having. And I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us tonight. And you know, we hardly scratched the surface of this. I also love that the creatives in the chat are so on board about what this is doing to the craft of what we do for a living. I'm also super concerned, maybe kind of like on a flip side, of how do we educate people who don't ever want to be cartoonists. They want to. Your Aunt Gladys is on Facebook sharing these things, you know, or making herself a cartoon, and just enjoying herself. Like, those are the kitchen table conversations we have to maybe slow this down a little bit.
Well, people were sharing all those. Well, I guess Sora's shut down. But people were sharing all those videos of like a cat fighting off a bear, or dogs running in and finding its owner, and all that. Totally fake, right? And like, your mom's not going to know that it's fake, right? They're not going to know. They're not going to know the whole other downside of that stuff, you know. And I think you have to sort of explain to your mom or your aunt or your uncle why that stuff is bad. You know, they just think it's funny, right? And that's how these companies get you, because they go on social media and everything everybody uses, and they put that stuff out because they know what people like. The algorithm has told them what people like, and so they're doing that stuff because they want to mainstream.
Sure, it's all everyone who submitted their photos to be de-aged or gender swapped or all that stuff. Scan my fingerprint to change my hair color.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a giant discussion we have to have there about educating the people around you. To kind of like stop giving this dragon so much fuel, right? So, all right, guys, let's start wrapping this up, guys. Thanks so much. So remember, next week Kaz will be on with us to continue this discussion about AI. Also, if you are looking for more Jamar, and who is it? You can join me here tomorrow for
That's not you.
Coffee. That's John Hirsch. You can join me here tomorrow for Coffee Break with JN, 9 p.m. EST, where I get to drink a cup of coffee and run my mouth.
And so, subscribe. We have a Patreon. You can go to the Patreon, and you know, it's $3. Give us $3.
That's the best pitch I've ever heard.
Give us $3. It's $1 a piece for. You know, we can, buy a piece of chewing gum.
We can split it.
Split it. We can split that. We can be like buy one John and split it 3 ways.
Steve is done after that. Yeah. I think you broke Steve with that.
What you doing with it? You don't do anything with the $3.
What can you buy for $3? It gives you this kind of quality.
Just give it to us. So speaking of that, guys, thanks so much. We had a packed house. Please don't hoard pencil to pencil audio yourself. Share this with your constituents. Every one of our not filthy in cleanliness, but our chat is lousy with cartoonists.
Our filthy
chat. Go back and tell your people, yo, there's this hot thing I'm checking out every Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST. It's called Pencil to Pencil. You need to be there too. Don't be selfish. Spread the love, why don't you? So hold Steve, I got it. So as we sign off for the evening, guys, our new patron saint of Pencil to Pencil, Sorcerer Supreme, Paulie Walnuts, says, "Hey T, I heard Drostradamus predicted all of this." Drostradamus. It's hilarious. So it would behoove all of you before we go out to that cold electric night. So make sure you wash those curvy hands. And also make sure you put a German Shepherd near the door because they can sniff out the T1000s.
I'm still confused by Judd Hirsch.
Get it, Dear John. Dear John. That was my favorite show. John. Once you read this letter, I'll be going. All right, guys. See you next time. See you tomorrow. Be good.